I'm trying to write comedy about this thing, but when the comedy becomes, when the reality is more bizarre, it's really hard to get your head around it. I mean, I thought we had seen the worst you could possibly hear from politicians in this country, but, you know, it's almost 2 months now since the election. It went from the ridiculous, it's gone through the boring phase, now it's just astounding, and it's extremely disrespectful, I think, of the general public, because they haven't even worked the weekends, these guys, you know. They need to get out and get the job done. I mean, we're watching them, their big long faces again in the 9 o'clock news again this evening. I'm drained, I'm sick to the teeth of watching these. They're just like, you can't believe a word from 1 minute to the next. And it's stressful. I have to watch the damn stuff to keep up to date with it. But I presume, and I just assume the rest of the country has totally switched off.
You say disrespectful?
Yeah, I mean, they've got 8 weeks. And by my reckoning, you've got ministers sitting there. They've got seals of office. I estimate, and this is very rough, back of the end, very conservative estimate, some of them have earned about €25,000 doing absolutely nothing since the election day. And if that is not a scandal, then you know what is. But you know what? We've got too many scandals to think of. They're caretaker ministers. I wouldn't trust them with a mop bucket, never mind a full government department. It is just absolutely outrageous. I mean, we know the figures. We've gone through the arithmetic. There's been so much analysis and commentary. It is just yawning. And no wonder people are more obsessed with Conor McGregor, whether he's retiring or not retiring, because this whole thing would put you off politics for good. And that's probably why we don't get anyone of a good quality in there. Enda Kenny is obsessed with making history as the first Fine Gael Taoiseach re-elected. Micheál Martin is the big, shiny, clean face of Fianna Fáil, bizarrely, because people don't have the capacity anymore to remember the scandals. We should put Enda Kenny, he wants to make history, we should make him history, and we should put him in a museum, and next to that, the Moriarty Tribunal report, and we put a big picture of Dennis O'Brien and Michael Lowry, Mary Harney's Florida haircut, you know, PPARs, e-voting, all of the scandals, and we build a 10-storey museum and make everyone in Ireland visit the museum compulsorily before they elect anybody, because otherwise, why on earth are people still voting for Fianna Fáil?
Well, you know what, they'll argue that they're working their posteriors off to try and get some class agreement together. Enda Kenny would no doubt argue this is not about him at all. It's about trying to get the right system in place and so on and so forth. So do you not give them any credit at all? It's a deeply cynical attitude that you have.
It is deeply cynical, but it's hard to not be anything but cynical when you're looking on at this kind of stuff. I mean, they've had all sorts of programmes going into an election. They know where they stand. They go into a room and discuss it. Work the weekend, you know, and then they're moving out to Trinity College. They'll probably do a tour of the Guinness Hop Store while they're at it next. You know what I mean?
So in many ways, here they are chatting all these weeks and months later. Nothing happening. Is there not a point that you have to think, we have to say to them, all right, you know what, it's going to be an election because this is going nowhere.
The only people who care about the tribal differences between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are those two exact parties. And it's all about, it's nothing, they're talking about national interests other than that. They have no national interest here at all. It's party agendas. They want to get one over the other. It's all about one-upmanship. And they're all worried about what will happen in the next election.
If they cobble together some class of a government, how serious is that? How long is that going to last? Whatever comes out of these talks in Trilogy, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it should last for a long time. Because they're being paid to do a job.
Well, mind that. And let's talk about the reality of lasting
the reality is they're constantly, and it's all in their heads. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. Basically, Fianna Fáil have kind of played a blinder in terms of the party political sphere. They completely command the agenda. That's why we're hearing about Irish Water all the time, because Irish Water is the great Fine Gael cock-up that Fianna Fáil can, you know, point to and say, even though they had a hand in the very beginning because they signed up to Irish Water beforehand, but it was the setting up and the €80 million that was squandered on just the consultants to set up Irish Water, which became a massive mess. People didn't protest until we discovered there was so much money being spent. So it's all about the one-upmanship on the other. Micheál Martin, if it is a minority government, he goes in and they do some kind of fudge in Irish Water, which they can both say we're both right. We both won. He will control whether that government lives and dies. And Enda Kenny continues on like the political undead that he is, you know. And it shouldn't be like that. They're constantly worried about, you know, who is going to be worse off in an election, if there is an election. Whereas, in fact, if they actually thought about it for a minute and said, just do a good job, and you might actually get re-elected on the basis of that. At the moment, are they? And I mean, we look at the Healy Rays in particular, and these are the guys we kind of see as a bit of crack. You know, the Healy Rays are like...
They're like the wiliest of them all, no?
Yeah, well, the wiliest, and we kind of see them as real characters. I mean, in any other society, these guys have made millions from the state, from contracts with Kerry County Council. 1 minute, politically, they're against Irish Water. The next minute, as businessmen, they're receiving contracts
All
for Irish water.
legitimately,
and, all legitimately, but it's part of straddling the same thing, and being on both sides of the fence at the same time. All SOPs auctions, protesting against that one minute, next minute buying a house from it. In any other society, the Healy-Raes would be seen as kind of, fat cats like the rest of businessmen. But in Ireland, you don't put it on. You have a good, funny Kerry accent, do a dance on a bonnet of a little Toyota Land Cruiser, and get run over by a cow, and you're a great lad.
See, do you know what? What you see? No, just no. Hang on, wait.
Come on, Healy-Raes got a half-hour infomercial on this programme a couple of weeks ago. You've stood up for them enough, I think, at this stage.
Okay, so they get 2.5 quotas, and it's comments like that you've just made on programmes that will get them. Do you know what? Fine. Another 2 quotas.
It probably will, but I don't understand that.
And they're sitting there going, you don't underestimate the people who voted for them. They're not stupid.
It's a strange thing in Irish politics. I mean, look at Michael Lowry. Either the people of Tipperary have never read anything about the Moriarty report, or worse, they have and they don't care. And it perfectly demonstrates, and we still have the problem today in our culture, Fianna Fáil, who wrecked the country, were in bed with property developers, and then you have Fine Gael who come along, and for 5 years they hand the keys to our remaining assets to vulture funds. And we need to talk about the elephant in the room, who is, whether we like it or not, and people are scared to talk about it, is Denis O'Brien. He was standing there with Enda Kenny. Enda Kenny said he accepted entirely the findings of the Moriarty Tribunal report. So why then, over the course of 5 years, does this government, during the duration of this government, Denis O'Brien gets a massive write-off from IBRC for purchasing Sightserve and Topaz? Both of those organisations win contracts, all legally and all fine.
You know what you're going to do now. You know what you're going to do. And Denis O'Brien isn't here to answer and to defend his good name.
It is the connection between business and politics.
And he will say those connections are spurious, and then we all get into a vicious circle of
He would admit them himself. Topaz won a €20 million contract. You can look it up. The reason why people don't know this contract from the state is because Denis O'Brien controls one faction of the media, and the other side of the media are too frightened to talk about it.
Big companies win big contracts. I don't think there's a fear. And you wonder...
It's great, but he's a great man for charity and everything like that, but I'd prefer if he paid his taxes in Ireland.
But you single him out for attention?
No, I think they'll go ahead, because independents, they don't want another election. They can't afford another election. Enda Kenny wants to be Taoiseach. He's really desperate for it. And Micheál Martin would be quite happy to go
to watch it.
Well, we have to be positive as well. There are great people in this country. I mean, what would we do if people didn't wake up in the morning and want to be nurses and guards and do all of these awful jobs that they're not being paid enough to do? They are wonderful people. But why don't the good people go into politics? And it's because of the nonsense we're watching now puts them completely off.
There are good people in politics. You can't just...
They are, but they don't get to cut through for some reason. Okay.